Love this podcast? Support this show through the Acast supporter feature. It's up to you how much you give, and there's no regular commitment. Just hit the link in the show description to support now.
Hi everyone and welcome to the Cognitive Recalibration Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Shravan. We've got Taran here with us.
Hey everyone.
And we have a special guest returning again, Kireeti.
Hey.
Welcome back.
No worries.
Today we're going to be talking about a much delayed review from us and a much anticipated movie of 2020, Christopher Nolan's Tenet. So,
woohoo!
Whenever someone asks me if I've seen this movie, the next question after I ask them that is, did I understand it? Pretty much. That's the how generally the conversation goes with this movie.
Well,
so,
how was the sound is what I like to ask, because clearly I had a much better experience than most other people.
So we'll get right into it. I've watched this twice now, so once in the cinema and then once on Blu-ray. And Taran, I think you've just watched it the once in the cinema, and you've watched it.
I watched it once, but I dream about it every night.
I guess a bit of background about this movie. It's obviously Christopher Nolan's 11th film. It's produced by him as well, and it's produced by him and his wife. Written by Nolan himself. Music is by
The
Ludwig.
whole thing was written by him.
Yeah, it's written by him. So Jonathan Nolan wasn't involved in this one. Music is by Ludwig Göransson.
Who also did
Black Panther.
Black Panther.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Childish Gambino's album.
Mandalorian.
yeah, he said it this time.
So it's the first time in a while that he hasn't collaborated with Hans Zimmer on this. And the reason for that is Hans Zimmer was dedicated to doing Dune, which is releasing later. Dune.
And also Wonder Woman.
He did do Wonder Woman, but that was beforehand.
I think that was before.
To be honest, he already did the theme for Wonder Woman. I couldn't really recognize it.
I didn't think he did anything extra on it.
Yeah. Press the replay button over.
Paycheck.
So that's why Nolan had to go with someone else for this one. So he went with Ludwig Göransson, and the cinematography is by the same cameraman as Interstellar, Hoyte van Hoytema, same as Dunkirk as well. So he's been using him for the last 3 movies. Worldwide release was on the 26th of August. We got it quite late here in Melbourne. I think it released like November for us or something.
Yeah, we weren't allowed to watch it.
That's right, yeah. And worldwide, it's sort of had delayed release, sort of depending on COVID conditions everywhere. But now it's actually available on Blu-ray and VOD. So if people want to watch it, you can watch it at home in the safety of your home.
It's good that they didn't bloody sell out to HBO Max like some other people.
Yeah, I think that was that was actually an option for this movie. But Chris Nolan was very persistent that it should be released in cinemas.
He's spoken out against DC. Dedicating itself to
Warner
HBO.
Brothers.
Yeah. So he has spoke, even though it hasn't actually directly impacted him.
Yeah.
I think his views are a bit polarizing, to be honest.
There's very strong opinions about a lot of things.
Yeah, I don't know. Do we need to talk about that in this podcast?
Yes.
We can.
We don't.
Well, he was very persistent that this movie should release in cinemas.
Yeah.
And whether that was...
He said that at a time where coronavirus was peaking in America, and he's like, you should go to cinemas and watch this in America, even though coronavirus was peaking. So, he obviously puts cinema ahead of people's health in that case.
Is that what he said? Did he say people should go to watch it in the cinema, or did he say that if you are to watch it, you should watch it in the cinema?
I think he said cinemas are struggling. This movie can save cinemas. Go to the cinema and watch this.
So basically, Warner Brothers' whole marketing for this movie was that it's going to save the theatrical experience because it's the first major release during coronavirus.
It didn't, right? It fucking failed.
It completely backfired, basically. So commercially, the budget, this is the biggest budget Nolan film, a standalone Nolan film. So Dark Knight.
What? Really?
Yeah, so this was $200 million. Interstellar, for comparison, I think it was $170 million.
What about Inception?
That was lower. I think that was $150 or something. So this is his highest standalone film, highest budget standalone film.
Yeah, I know why. It's got a plane. It's all because of that plane, right?
Yeah.
I mean, in Inception, they got a train. Was that graphics?
No.
Nah.
Yeah, they got a train in the middle of the road.
But it was just like they put a train on top of a car.
I've
talked about this before, haven't we?
Did you in that
Yeah, when we talked about Inception, I thought it was a train as well, but he was telling me it's a truck basically, but
the outside of it's built like a train. Yeah.
Sure, smart.
But still practical. So it's not visual effects or anything. In terms of box office, it's made 361 million, which is definitely a commercial failure when you look at it from that.
And how much did it cost again?
200 million.
Okay.
Yeah. That's just the production budget. So then there'll be marketing budget, everything on top of that. So generally it's double that. Yeah. So it basically hasn't made its money back. So the decision to release this was probably not a good one, to be honest. They probably should have delayed it in hindsight. I think
the time they released it, the controversy with Warner Brothers releasing stuff on HBO Max is different to Christopher Nolan releasing this in theaters at the time that he released it. Denis Villeneuve and all those directors that have a problem with the HBO Max, I understand that. But he shouldn't have released it then. And he shouldn't have been asking people to go to the cinema to watch it.
And if you look at it from Warner Brothers' standpoint, so they released this film, and they were at the time of the release, they wanted to conserve the theatrical experience. They were talking about all of that stuff. But within 2 months of the release of this movie, they basically did a complete backflip on that, and they're releasing all their other movies on HBO Max for 2021. So I think they've learned some
indirectly,
lessons.
Chris Nolan has influenced their decision.
Because they've lost a lot of money on this. So obviously they don't want this to happen again.
Yeah.
And they want the HBO Max numbers to go up. Whether that's actually going to make the money as well is debatable, but they obviously have to change their strategy indirectly because of this film. I guess we'll get straight into... I've got some other trivia and stuff which we can get into while we talk about the movie, but we'll get straight into the story. So this is probably the most difficult story to explain. The reason we've got Kireeti on this episode is because he was telling us that he basically understood most of the movie. So that's why we've got him on. I think me and Tyrone understood maybe...
I understood the whole movie.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And I wanted to smack Tyrone when he said the movie was shit.
Okay. You got all that to look forward to then. All right. So what was the story of what's the basic plot?
So I think there's an important concept.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's important to understand the movie this way, but I was watching this video of a physicist who explains it really well, right? So you don't need to be a physicist to understand this movie, clearly. But essentially what this movie uses as a concept is a concept of entropy, right? Which I understand is like the flow of disorganization. So generally, as time goes forward in our universe, right, things get more disorganized. It's very rare that something becomes more organized as time goes forward. So for an example, just elements tend to mix more as time goes forward. It's very rare that elements that have reacted then split up into like their purest form as time goes forward, okay?
There's more impurity as you go forward in time.
Exactly, right? Yeah, that's like a core concept, right? What Christopher Nolan is saying, which you have to accept but may not make sense, is that as time going forward means that entropy must go forward, and therefore by reversing time, you will also reverse entropy, as in you'll decrease entropy, which means as you can make things revert back to their original stage, right, and become more organized by flipping time. So you can disagree. In order to understand and go along with the movie, you have to just take on that concept. The other thing is that he introduced this concept that, because the movie is not just time travel, it is also that your intentions can control objects that have been inverted, okay? And I'll explain what inverted means. So this movie deals with people going through time forwards, people going backwards through time, objects going through time forward, and objects going backwards in time, regardless of the atmosphere around them. So people can go through time forwards whilst the rest of the world around them goes backwards in time. So it's like that sort of relationship. I think that's why things get a bit confusing, because there's objects that, in this movie throughout, there's like guns that if you intend it, you can catch bullets with your gun, despite the fact that you're going forward in time. And that's the confusing part, because that's when you go, wait, how is he able to do that? How is he able to do this thing with this inverted bullet, even though he's not actually going backwards in time himself, right? And so then those two concepts tend to clash a lot, and therefore things become quite confusing. Let's just put that aside. I think essentially what this movie is...
So that's the conceptual background to this movie, basically. Yeah.
And I think this whole concept in the movie is described or referred to by Tenet, okay? The word Tenet and this gesture. And I think the movie just starts off with the main protagonist, whose name you actually don't find out, right? But Denzel Washington's son, I don't know, what's this guy's name?
John David Washington.
John David Washington.
Yeah.
Essentially, the movie is about him finding out this concept of Tenet and trying to figure out where it leads and to prevent some global catastrophe that is linked with this concept of entropy being inverted and time being inverted.
Yep.
That's essentially the movie. And in order to do that, there's various characters that go backwards in time, go forwards in time. There's various loops of time that occur. That's essentially the movie. I mean, I don't think it's worth going. Like, do you want to go step by step as to what happens in the movie? We can do that in the spoiler.
We can jump into spoilers later. So I guess
that's going to be a bitch. That's going to be like, explain the loops. But yeah, it can be done. Can be done.
Yeah, we'll get into that in spoilers. I guess we'll give our high-level thoughts on the movie, what we thought about it, and then we can jump to spoilers.
All right. Time to argue, Tharon.
I'll give you my thoughts. I guess I appreciate Christopher Nolan's ambition. So obviously he's not influenced by what people think, obviously. He makes movies the way he wants to make them. So I appreciate that. The key thing for me about this movie is, and compared to his previous movies, so Inception is also sort of a complicated concept as well, going into dreams. It's a heist in dreams, and this notion that if you plant an idea, it manifests itself and it'll come out in reality. That was all part of Inception, but I went with it because the underlying emotional base of the film was there. So Leonardo DiCaprio, he was kind of doing this so that he can see his kids again.
Yeah,
that was sort of the underlying story as well. So
you understand that this guy has always been looking for something, and something's finally a way out of his trap.
That's right. So you're kind of on the character side, whereas this movie, I didn't really have that. There was stuff with Elizabeth Debicki's character, how she wanted to have her son back and that stuff. But the main character, so firstly, you don't even know his name, and you don't know anything about him, really. It's just...
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I think that's why I don't think it's as good as those movies.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's the main thing, is it lacked your, being emotionally invested in any of the characters.
That's right, yeah. So I just found myself... So I'll explain my experience in the cinema with this. So firstly, I couldn't hear most of the dialogue. There was the music was just too overpowering in the session that I went to, and this is not unique to me. A lot of other people have experienced this as well. So I basically couldn't understand most of the dialogue, and this is a movie where you need to really understand almost every single dialogue to understand what's happening. So that really impacted my viewing experience in the first time I watched it. So basically the overpowering music and the lack of understanding of dialogue, coupled with this basically lack of emotional attachment to any of the characters, it made it really difficult for me to sort of care about what was happening on the screen, especially once you get to sort of climax stages of this film, when there's a lot of sort of chaos on the screen. There's a lot happening, basically, and I just wasn't connected with it. I was finding myself actually quite bored. The second time I watched it, it was a little bit different because I did understand the concept a bit better, what was happening, but there was still a general lack of emotional connection with the film, which I had for basically all these other films. So maybe Dunkirk was similar. Like Dunkirk, you don't really have that much of a connection. But
What? Okay, I haven't listened to your review of Dunkirk yet. I think Dunkirk... I honestly don't think...
Who are you connected with in Dunkirk?
No, I don't think Dunkirk needs that. You don't need a character. As in, because people... It's a Second World War. And, you're placed in a situation where you already know what the stakes are.
Yeah.
You already know. And I also think a lot of people know about the story of Dunkirk. And I don't think Christopher Nolan came into that movie going, I'm going to explain to you what the situation is. No. I think he just assumed that people will know. If you don't, you don't. He clearly doesn't give a shit.
Yeah.
He's just like,
and that's evident
I'm telling you
with
this
movie
is
as
what
well.
the stakes are. And that's it. And this is what's going to happen.
Dunkirk was a little bit different, though, because that was...
First World War?
Second,
yeah.
It is second. Okay, yeah.
But that was a little bit different because that was a much shorter film than this. That was a shorter film. That was like an hour shorter than this movie.
Oh, was it?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
How long?
That was I think that was only
It's an hour and a half, I think. Yeah.
So that was a much shorter film, a much more condensed story.
Where did you guys... So, where did you guys put Dunkirk compared to you didn't do Tenet, right?
No, we didn't. Yeah. So
where did you put it? Just as a matter
It's
of
on the
interest.
lower side of it.
It's on the second half.
Fuck, I need to slap you guys.
You can give us your ranking. You can give us your ranking afterwards.
I just think it's not that much of a captivating movie. You're just watching guys running around with war happening.
I mean, did you guys like 1917?
I thought
I thought
1917 was a
1917 was
much better
better.
movie.
I think they're pretty similar. But I think 1917. I mean, look, we're definitely going into tangents right now. But hold with us. I think
1917 has much more of an emotional core, and you connect with the characters more. And there's actually there's more dialogue in the movie, but it's still limited. And there's a story that you follow. Whereas with Dunkirk, it's just like three different time periods of storylines, and they come together at the end. But there's not much. There's not much with the story, actually. If you look at the story, there's not much that actually happens.
What I was going to say was the previous films, so Interstellar, for example, or Inception, or any of his sort of high concept films, there was sort of an emotional connection with at least one of the characters, which this movie probably lacked.
I think the thing about Dunkirk is, and I think often they do this with good war movies, do it. What they're going for in Dunkirk, in my opinion, is like, you know, the whole concept of the unknown digger that we call in Australia, or like the unknown soldier. I think Nolan just wanted, like, you had to know history to enjoy that movie. Like, you had to understand what Dunkirk was. Dunkirk was the last retreat that England had to make, and it was a switch out. So the Germans thought they were going to a different coast. They thought they were going to like Dover, and they ended up going somewhere, and it was Dunkirk, and so they switched out. Ended up being a really good move, and they were able to defend the coast, and the people that came from England were able to save them. And so you need to kind of understand how strong that was, because that pretty much that was a turning point for the war. There were like 1 million soldiers on that beach, and if they went down, it would have been over for England, it would have been over for the Alliance, and Germany would have won, pretty much. Maybe, like, unless America entered. But like that was a big turning point. And also I think they emphasize like story of like random people, and that was the point of it, is that it's random and that you don't know the background for this person. That's the whole point of like war stories, is that these guys are actually just like random people who don't have anything in it, and they're just chucked into a screwed up circumstance. But yeah, I mean, if that resonates with you, it resonates. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But I think that's what it was going for.
I mean, historically, it's interesting, but I just think it's not a movie that I'd revisit a lot compared to his other movies. Yeah.
I think the soundtrack was really good. It was Hans Zimmer again, obviously.
Yeah.
The ticking.
I didn't watch that one in the cinema, but was it a similar experience in terms of like the sound being very loud for Dunkirk?
Yeah, the sound was loud, but you could hear.
There's no dialogue in Dunkirk anyway, so it doesn't matter.
There's not much, but it's not overpowering.
Because people have told me like Dunkirk, even Interstellar was very loud for them.
Interstellar has moments where you can't hear the dialogue at all. Yeah.
I think that's a directorial choice as well. Like often with these in the space, when they go through a crash and stuff, you can just hear what they're saying, but like, and it's blurted out by silence rather than music.
There was parts where he put more music in.
Yeah. And when you enter the Tesseract, you know, in the black hole, it's like this music that keeps hitting you, and you just can't hear what this guy's saying.
Yeah, but
I didn't hate it in Interstellar. I didn't hate it in any of his previous movies, but in this movie, it was too much.
And in Interstellar, I think the dialogue in those scenes wasn't probably as important.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not.
Wait, what did you rate
imperative.
Interstellar?
Interstellar was up there. It's okay.
It was in my first half.
Yeah.
It was in my first half of these movies. Yeah.
Fair enough. All right, cool.
All right, we'll get into your ranking.
Back to topic.
We'll get into your ranking at the end. But anyway, my experience with Tenet was I was probably a little bit disappointed, but I can understand what he's doing. But I think it's just a little bit too inaccessible for more than the general audience. I think there's a very small niche in the audience that will really, really enjoy this movie. But I think it's really inaccessible for most people.
I think you enjoy it if you accept that there is this guy who discovers something he wasn't supposed to discover, i.e. the concept of Tenet. And therefore he takes him on, and then his superiors, he was tested by, I think, his own people, was deemed to be trustworthy, and was just essentially just told, you need to now just figure things out, right? We don't properly understand it, and we don't want to tell you about anything on purpose. Yeah. You need to go figure it out and figure out how to save yourself. And I'll talk about spoilers in this, but the reason it's so vague is because there is a reason for that. And I think you understand it when you think about it once you've watched the whole movie. You get to the end, and then you're like, okay, there's a reason why things aren't explained at the start. Do I need to keep explaining?
No, continue with your thoughts.
No, that was it.
Oh, okay, is that your thoughts?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Yep. So is it my thoughts now?
Yes.
Yeah. I actually think... Do you know how you explained the concept before?
Yeah.
I don't think that is the part of the plot that I don't understand. I think the concept is actually quite easy to understand, and even the general moviegoer would go in and understand that concept. That's not the hard part to understand. The plot is very convoluted outside of that concept. Okay. Outside of that concept, the plot makes no sense because he's doing shit and you're like, why we could go through it in spoilers.
Yeah.
But it makes no sense outside of the concept, not because of entropy and all that. That's all fine.
I think the convolution is integral to the concept because the whole reason it keeps happening is because this guy doesn't know how to, like, there's only one way to do things. Like, this guy gets an idea and he's like, I need to invert. And so then it happens. And you're like, shit, okay, now it's confusing. And then he's like, well, now this needs to happen. Invert again. It just keeps happening.
But outside the inversion, don't worry about the I understand all that.
Yeah.
Just the plot in terms of what happens, that is
No,
what
but
doesn't make
I'm
sense
talking
to me.
about, like, the plot in regards to inversion because, like, things get really confusing once people start inverting all over the place.
But
I'm fine with all that. That's the part I understand.
Which
I'm
is the
okay
part that
with
you're
that.
confused with.
There is, we could go through it in spoilers.
Okay.
So I
but-
think high level. I think what you're saying is there's a lot of these random characters that are dispersed in.
Yeah,
dispersed in
there's
the plot,
characters
right?
in this movie that don't need to be in this movie and have no influence on the whole plot of this movie, and you can skip them and go to a different section, and it would make no sense. He goes, there's parts
I don't
of this
agree.
movie.
Let's
there's
go-
many
we should go
parts
through
of this
them,
movie
yeah.
where he's like, you have to go see this person, and they'll give you information on this person.
Yeah.
So he goes and sees this person, and they say, go see this person. And he's like, okay, I'll go see this person. Then he goes and sees this person, and this person's like, oh, you got to do this for me, and then I'll go see this person. It's just a lot of that.
I think it's hard to understand, but I think it makes sense.
I just thought it was unnecessary and it bloated the movie.
I think I think the whole point of this movie was that it's like this one guy who is on this like path of like discovering shit that's way too big for him, right?
Yeah, but there's unnecessary characters
I-
in the middle there.
I disagree with you saying it's unnecessary. Look, you can rewrite this in a much more
You could rewrite this to be so much tighter.
yes, but I think the whole
No,
point
you
of
can
it
still
not
have
being
you can
tight,
still have the confusion. You can still have the confusion,
Yeah.
and have it tighter and make more sense at the end.
I can't think of a character that was unnecessary. So I'm very
there's-
confused.
There's
Okay,
like,
we should talk about
there's
this.
like so many characters. There's at least there's
Except for
characters.
Auntie G.
Yeah.
No, Auntie G was necessary. Anyway.
Well, Auntie G is who I'm talking about. She's not necessary in this movie at all.
what do you mean? What?
And there's Aaron
the one
Taylor
who
Johnson's character who's not necessary in this
Who's Aaron
movie.
Taylor Johnson?
He's the. We'll get into spoilers. Yeah,
Okay, let's get into
Aaron
it. Let's get into
Taylor
it. Yeah.
Wait, are we going into spoilers now?
Let's get into it.
I guess we'll give our ratings. We'll jump into spoilers. So my rating is
Don't tell me doing Infinity Stones.
nah. We'll,
Okay. Compared to Batman vs Superman.
It's obviously better than that.
yeah, I mean it's.
But that's not a high bar to set.
as in it's, I can't say this is a bad. It's not a bad movie. There's no way you can say it's a bad
a good movie.
Yeah.
I just went in with super high expectations, I think.
Yeah.
And I want it to be as good as Inception, but it's not.
I think
It's
everyone
just a
should-
good movie.
I don't
Yeah.
think it's as good as Inception. I'm pretty sure every Dunkirk, Inception, the Dark Knight trilogy, except for the third one. Okay,
I would even rate this worse than Dark Knight Rises.
I reckon they're around the same.
Yeah, they're close.
Yeah,
I would put it just below. Yeah.
And like pretty much, so Inception, Dunkirk, Interstellar,
It's
Memento,
on
all
the
of them
bottom.
are better.
It's on the bottom end of his movies.
But
yeah,
what about like the didn't you watch
Following.
like
Following's not
So
a
I-
great.
the
I've
following
seen-
sounded like it was a piece of shit.
No, I've seen all these movies, and this is in the bottom three.
Bottom three. I reckon bottom three.
But like the other two,
So I think
how many movies-
Insomnia, and
Insomnia is
Follower.
probably better than this.
Insomnia's
be
nah,
honest.
I don't think so. I've seen Insomnia. I thought Insomnia was just like, yeah,
It's good.
it's okay.
This is probably deep. If you completely understand this and study this is probably a better movie. But
There is a
I
fundamental.
just wanted it to
Yeah.
be better. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is a fundamental concept that is very hard. No, there's two particular concepts in this movie, and this is not necessarily a spoiler, but I'm going to be talking about. I don't think this will spoil it, but if you really want to stay away from it, just don't listen to this. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Okay, they believe that when you reverse time, you need to reverse oxygen inhalation, which is bullshit. I mean, how does that work? Why? That's assuming that. I don't think that's so dumb to even include
I'm
that
okay.
in there.
Look, I'm okay with that.
But it's like,
yeah.
I mean, why? I mean, there's oxygen in the air, whether
No,
you're
like,
going
all-
forward
all-
or back.
I mean,
it's fine.
We'll get more into the
Okay.
spoilers,
Yeah.
but there was stuff that was included.
But then
that
there's
was-
another thing, which is way
It's
deeper.
the explosion one because
No, no,
that's
no.
bullshit.
Wait, what? Explosion one?
The explosion part will go through it in
yeah.
spoilers.
But then the other thing is that if you believe that you are able to reverse disorganization, then how is your consciousness able to go forward in time? Consciousness is literally making more new. It's like it's the definition of increasing entropy. So if you're trying to reverse entropy, it doesn't make any sense. Like you can't be going backwards in time and then with your body inverting everything, and then suddenly your consciousness is still going forward. That
consciousness in the sense like your memory, like everything else
as in
is going
everything
forward.
in the mind, like whatever the
going
mind is going forward.
But that's taking this to a very deep level, and I don't think you need to take it that deep, and you can still understand the entropy and all that kind of stuff. My problems with it aren't that. Okay. I can ignore all that and be like, this makes sense, but the plot is what I have a problem with.
So let's run through it. Have you got like a? Well,
did you rate it?
You have an essay.
This is other stuff related to production, but anyway, my rating is
Shit, we haven't rated it.
You should still watch it, so I'd still give it a cognitive recalibration, but it's definitely not going to be for everyone. I'll just say that.
I think everyone should at least just watch it. I can't tell people to watch it in theater because clearly all the theaters have screwed it. Like, well, most of them. If you go watch it in a small theater, it might work. I got lucky. I watched it in a theater where the sound worked perfectly, and
maybe it's better off on Blu-ray. Oh yeah, and I didn't mention it. I had the same problem with the sound that Shravan did. So
yes.
Yeah.
So what would you rate? You can do a rating out of 10 or 5 or whatever.
Let's go. I reckon it's an 8 out of 10. Right. I don't think I've ever given a movie, like my favorite movies don't go above 9.7. And that's like my favorite movies. So, and most Nolan movies are hitting around low 9s. Maybe Inception was probably a 9.5. Interstellar, like they're like, yeah. Don't ever give things out of 10 just for context. So I reckon it's like an 8 out of 10.
I think us two have a very similar. Like we rate this the same.
Yeah,
like it's ranked the same.
That's why I want to fucking.
But
stab
my whole Nolan ratings are lower than yours. I think.
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah, but like I think it's probably the same as what you think. Yeah. But
wait,
not an 8 out of 10.
Oh, okay.
It's not an 8 out. Yeah, like everything's lower.
Yeah.
But it ranks in the same.
So we disagree then. I think we do disagree then.
I think you think all Nolan movies are better than I think they are.
Yeah, so we disagree.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what would you give? What would you give it out of 10?
I'd rate out of 10.
Okay.
Because I would.
What would you give it out of 6 stones?
I think it's good. It's worth a watch. I wouldn't watch it again, though.
I just find it a bit of a chore to watch again. Like, I tried to watch it again.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to understand.
You have to concentrate. You can't. You can't fuck around in that movie.
Yeah, it's too much. Too much. If you like thinking a lot and you watch something and you want to be locked in, then this is for you.
And
but
this is different. Like, I like watching Inception to study it and like find different things about it. This was just too much. Like I just couldn't do it. I just didn't want to really spend more time watching this again. Anyway, we'll get to spoilers. So if you haven't seen Tenet and you do care about spoilers, please come back to this point in the episode and you can listen to our spoilers. You've been warned.
That was a really
Sorry.
loud placement of Coke on the table.
Thought that would not be that loud.
All right, so we'll get into spoilers. Just to start off the conversation, I'll just say that this movie, do you think it's bad storytelling that it's so hard to understand? Like, is this bad storytelling?
Yes.
Or is it just because it's so complicated that it's hard to understand?
That's the thing. I don't think it's that complicated. I think it's bad storytelling.
Well, Okay.
Look, the concept, like you said, the concept is complex if you go into it a lot. But you can discount all that and it's relatively simple to understand. But the movie is confusing because of the plot point.
So what's the story then? What story are you telling in this movie?
The story is actually quite simple if you think about it.
Is it?
Yeah.
I don't think the story's simple at all.
Yeah, well, if you break it down...
The concepts might be simple, but the story's not simple.
If you break down the story, there's a guy that has a doomsday device.
Yeah.
This guy gets recruited to a spy agency to stop the guy from letting off the doomsday device. That's the story. That is essentially the story.
So it's a normal spy.
It's a spy movie. This could be a James Bond movie.
Yeah.
Essentially. He's recruited to a spy agency to stop this guy from setting off his doomsday device.
It's not just that. He's the guy sending his doomsday device to the future.
Or he's communicating
it's
with
still,
the future, right?
It's still a doomsday. It's a clock that's ticking down to a certain point where he's going to send this doomsday device to the future.
if you break every movie down, it's going to be like that though. But the bomb is split up into pieces that were sent into the past, which is the present, and are split up, and then other people in the future tell this guy to get the pieces, put them together, and send them to the future.
Which is
that's
not that
fucked.
dude. That's not that that's not that complex.
Okay.
You explained it to me in one sentence. It's not complex at all. It's not complex at all.
No, but okay, that's not the story. But then now there's the protagonist.
But yeah, now you're telling.
Now there's the protagonist.
That's a start and end point, and that's what he needed. And in the middle, he needed to put all these beats to get there, and he's just put in too many beats and made it too confusing.
No, but that's not the whole story. Now there's this protagonist that needs to prevent this from happening.
Okay, yeah, I said that already. Yeah.
No, but like, how does he do it? He creates an organization that convinces himself in the past to then do it.
That's still also very easy.
Okay.
And that's,
So I mean, but like at the baseline, if you were to break down other stories, they wouldn't be as complex as this. If you were to break down any other movie, you could say it in like a few words. Whereas we had to talk about.
No, but this is
okay. Break down Batman. He's a guy who doesn't like crime that is not being properly enforced by the police, so he does it. He's a vigilante.
Well,
What's
depends
Superman?
which movie you're
What's
talking
Superman?
about.
What's Superman? He's a guy who born with a shit ton of powers, protects innocent people. What's every Marvel film?
But
What's Captain Marvel? A piece of shit.
No, but you've simplified it to what the character's doing. And if I simplify this movie to what the character does, there's a guy that's trying to stop the doomsday device from going on. That's to simplify this movie to what the character... Yeah, from the device from going off in the future.
Yeah.
That is simplifying it to what the main character's doing in this movie. So that's like saying Batman's trying to stop crime.
Yeah.
That is what Batman does. This guy, he's trying to stop the doomsday device from going off in the future. That is what he's trying to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
But I still feel like the villain having his plot is complex enough, and the protagonist having his own plot are like these two things that are going on that interact with each other that I think are more complex than most other movies.
I'm not discounting that it's a complex movie.
I think even
he
the
made
story...
he made it too complex.
Okay, so now the question is, how do you make a story? Well, how do you make a story? So like this guy... So, I mean, let's say Christopher Nolan wrote this story, right? When he thought of this character, I don't think he thought in endpoints. Okay. He didn't go, this guy has to stop this bomb. All right. He didn't just go, there's a protagonist. He needs to do some time bullshit and needs to stop this doomsday device from going on. I think he thought about it in that he gets clues in this way and has to like do this. He literally has to do this convoluted timeline in order to get to the endpoint, rather than it being how many like journeys can this guy get through before we get to the end of the movie. I don't think that's how Christopher Nolan thought of it.
Okay.
I think these are like trials for him.
I get you saying that. Okay. But
we somehow agreeing but also disagreeing.
Yeah. I get what you're saying. He needs to go through these things to get to a certain point.
Yeah.
But also, Christopher Nolan wrote this movie, so he doesn't need to go through some particular things to get there. Christopher Nolan can write it so that he only needs to go a certain direction. So to get into the story, he gets recruited to organization. I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
They put him through a test. It's okay. I'm okay up till that point. And then he's put on this path.
He doesn't actually get recruited. He's already in the organization.
Oh, but they test him to see if
For
he's...
this particular project,
He accidentally gets exposed to it, which means they're forced to explain it to him.
Well, he gets tested by the organization to see his loyalty, and then they're like, okay, we can put you into this.
No. I think what happens is he accidentally sees Tenet happen. He sees a bullet inversion, right?
No, I think that's the guy did that on purpose.
Well, yes.
Because Robert Pattinson... Also,
Robert
there's
Pattinson
a bullshit
does it on
twist in this
purpose.
movie where...
Robert Pattinson does it on purpose because he knows it has to happen.
Yeah.
Why does he do it? Because he was told by the protagonist to do it.
Yeah, okay. So that's fine. Yeah. So he basically sees it, and then he's part of the plan. Yeah.
He sees
but I'm okay with all that up till then. That's fine.
Wait, so we're still talking about the first act. So let's just should we tell people what happens?
If they're listening up to this point, they've already seen it. They've already seen it. So we don't need to explain
you sort of
it.
explained it already.
Yeah.
So he's put under a test, and then he gets recruited.
So he's
I don't think so. That mission at the start is not a test.
The test was when he swallowed he had to take the cyanide test. Yeah. Okay, so he's recruited. That's all good. The guy gives him the word and says, you have to go to this place to find out more about Tenet. So he goes and he talks to that lady and he finds out a bit about Tenet. I'm fine with that. That's okay.
Cool.
And then this lady says, you have to go meet this other lady, she says an arms dealer, to find out where the inverted weapons are coming from.
Yes.
So this is where it becomes a bit like, why is this happening? Because he goes from wherever he is to India, and then he meets Robert Pattinson, which I get he has to meet Robert Pattinson in some way.
This happens after he has
Talks to Alfred.
He talks to Michael Caine.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Because
but
Michael Caine-
before all of that, doesn't he meet Fleur Delacour, and she like shows him?
That's
No,
what we're talking
I talked about that.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then she tells him to go meet Michael Caine.
Yeah.
Okay,
Why
wait,
is
so-
Michael Caine in this movie?
Okay, so
Michael Caine doesn't
Fleur
need to be
Delacour-
in this movie.
Fleur Delacour, right? I totally forgot that is Fleur, but it is Fleur. Okay, so this mate, the whole Chamber of Secrets fucking tournaments come into this. Fucking the guy who dies,
Rob
Cedric,
Pattinson, yeah.
Cedric Fleur, bruh. Who else is it? Where's that
Kenneth
crumb
Branagh,
bastard?
Kenneth Branagh from the second one.
Kenneth Branagh is.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
What's that guy's name? again?
Lockhart.
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 Yeah.
Anyway,
Rockhart
so
from Lockhart.
What about Fleur?
Okay, so Fleur.
But I'm
tells
saying
him
I'm
about the
okay with
concept.
this.
Yeah,
I'm okay
tells
with
him
this.
about concept, but also explains to him inverted objects, how inverted objects work.
I'm okay with all that. That's
So
fine.
then he's like, okay, I've seen this residue. I need to track this. And they realize it's British. Like the British people know about how to access.
Okay, so
that's why he talks about British intelligence.
This is a part where you can write one person out of this story. It doesn't change anything. So he meets Michael Caine to
Yep.
find out information to meet someone else.
Okay,
you can write out Michael Caine. You
how do
can
you get
write
Robert
out Michael
Pattinson
Caine.
involved? Robert Pattinson's a British intelligence agent. He's British intelligence.
He meets Robert Pattinson when he goes to India.
Yeah, but which is organized, which is assumed.
But you
that-
could write out Michael Caine in this movie.
No,
You
but
don't need-
Alfred, Alfred. All right, let's call it fucking Alfred. Alfred puts him in touch with Robert Pattinson. That's not like I'm pretty sure he knew he was going to meet someone from British intelligence.
Okay, what you can have is Fleur Delacour say, "Go to India to meet this person," and then he'll take you through what could happen. Why does he need to go to meet Michael Caine?
because
so he can tell them a little bit of
but
extra
Michael
information.
Caine's supposed to be a big dog. Fleur Delacour is some. Okay,
Who cares?
Fleur
Write
Delacour's
Fleur
a random
Delacour as
bitch
a
in the
bigger dog. Write her as a bigger dog. Why do you need this
Or
guy
just
in
have
this movie?
Michael Caine be that character.
Yeah, you can have Michael Caine be Fleur Delacour.
sure, but
Why
you need
is there
Michael
two
Caine to have a
characters-
British accent always.
Yeah. Why is there
Okay.
there's two characters in
that's-
this movie doing the job of one character, and it pads out the time and makes it confusing. Like, why are you going from this place to this place to this place? Like, how long does this take?
No.
How long?
It means
how many
it's
days
one,
does this
so
come
it's one
over?
step though, but it's like one step. I would agree with you if it was like Michael Caine,
Okay,
then someone else, then someone else, and then it was Robert
there is
Pattinson.
another step.
Okay.
So he goes there.
Yeah.
He meets Robert Pattinson, which I know it needs to happen.
Yeah.
But then the reason he goes there is to meet the arms dealer. But the arms dealer says you have to go meet this other bloke. So they could have gone straight from Michael Caine to Kenneth Branagh. They didn't need Indian chick in the middle.
No.
They did not. But Kenneth Branagh's an arms dealer anyway. Why is he meeting this random Indian chick in the middle?
How does he know that that's a source? He finds out that. Wait, what does she say? I can't remember. Doesn't she direct him for a reason? Does she just talk shit? I don't think she just talks shit the whole time.
No,
She
but
just
she
says-
does it on purpose, right? Because he had to fail. Basically, he had to fail. He had to let Kenneth Branagh get all the parts, right? That was the whole plan.
He had to let him get all the parts
Yeah.
so that the parts would be together so that they could go in and get
And
the
then
parts
get all
and
the
then
parts
split them
together.
up.
Yeah.
Yep. But that character didn't need to be there. He could have gone straight from...
No, but then he had to go to her because she...
That could
'cause
be
he-
Robert Pattinson.
No,
that could be Robert Pattinson.
But he couldn't go directly to Kenneth Branagh. He had to go through the wife because he's hard to...
Okay, I'm happy for that.
Yeah.
But
Yes,
why
so-
does the Indian chick need to tell him to go to the wife to get to Kenneth Branagh when British intelligence should know where this is coming from? And Robert Pattinson could just tell, or Michael Caine could have just told him.
Michael Caine
Does
tells
tell him.
it,
Does
though.
tell him.
Michael
Yeah.
Caine
Then
tells
why
him
does he
that,
go
yeah.
to this Indian chick? Why
Yeah.
is she in this movie?
No, because I'm pretty sure there is a reason. Like he says, like that's where there is an
You're
involvement.
pretty sure there's a reason, so you don't even know
Bro,
if
like
there's a
it's
reason.
been a while since I watched this movie. Okay, but no, I mean, of course, there's like, okay, look, we can rewatch it, but he's directed because she's involved in directing arms for this guy. She's like in partnership with this guy. I mean, I'm gonna have to look up particulars because it is a confusing movie.
I'm okay with all that.
Yeah.
But the thing is, why does she have to be in this movie? What does she add to this movie?
Okay, what is okay? But I mean, there's so many.
What does
characters.
she add to this movie?
There's so many characters you can take out like that.
No, there isn't. In a strong movie, there's no character that you can take out without not having...
But I think what these characters do is they don't add convolution for the sake of convolution. They show that he's discovering new things and it's so hard to get to this guy, right? They need to figure out that's the journey. It's not like they invest a lot of time in these people, right? They don't invest that much time. It's not like fucking Star Wars. It's not fucking Star Wars where they go.
Kenneth Branagh doesn't come into this movie till past the halfway point. You don't actually have a villain until past the halfway point in this movie.
Really?
He does come in quite... I don't know if it's halfway. He does come in...
It's a long movie.
It's very late.
He does come in later, but...
it is late. It's probably 1 hour in. How long is this movie?
It's like an hour in.
Two
So
and
the
a half
first
hours,
1 hour of this movie is set up, which is... you could have condensed that to half an hour and then had much more of a action-packed, interesting second half where the story's ticking along a bit more and you're not getting bored from all this setup.
No, I
That's
think
just trying to confuse you more while you're trying to understand
No,
this.
but I don't think...
You're trying to understand this concept as well while this movie's going on.
Yeah.
And then to add to that, he's made a complex plot which doesn't need to be there. It can be... If you have a complex... what's it called? Like a complex concept in the central part of the movie. You don't need a complex plot as well. You've already got the complex concept. You can make it a simpler plot to make it tie together a bit more.
You could, but would you get the same impact?
I think you would.
I mean, in Inception, why didn't they just make that guy? Because like
Inception has a simple story though.
I mean, people fucking walked out of Inception
but
trying to figure out what the fuck.
Dumb shits. They're dumb shits. They're dumb shits. The ones that don't understand Inception.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
So you're saying if you have a complex theme, you have to make your storyline straightforward?
I don't know if it doesn't need to be straightforward, but it doesn't need to be. It doesn't need this many steps to get to the main part of the movie.
But I feel like the journey, because like this guy is just put out there, right? He's not like prepared by his agency at all. It doesn't seem like he is.
You can still have that feeling without having this many steps to get to a certain point.
I don't think that these steps actually fuck the movie up. I feel like it gives me a sense that the protagonist is actually like going through and finding out things, and even the sense of like, even if you think it is futile, that is like this futile step that has happened, and it will get him to this guy. And I think adding more time, going straight to Kenneth Branagh, is that how you say his name?
Branagh, yeah.
Branagh,
Yeah.
Right? It's like going straight to him would fuck it up. It would be like,
I'm not saying go straight to him.
okay, so then how
Just
many
skip
aunties do you want?
No, skip the middle part.
What's the middle part?
Go from Michael Caine
Yeah.
to Elizabeth Debicki.
Okay, so skip auntie.
Skip Auntie. She doesn't need to be in this movie.
So it's one person you want to skip.
No, but then there's more after this.
Okay,
there's
fine.
more after
Okay.
this.
There's like two scenes in the middle.
okay, fine.
Right? There's a scene with Rob Pattinson in the hotel.
Yeah.
And then there's the reverse bungee jumping scene where he goes to meet.
Yeah, there's like that action scene in there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you go back to auntie at a later point.
That's like 20 minutes. That's 20 minutes of the movie. That action scene takes a while.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
So
Okay.
just a break here.
yeah.
So I think I can see what you're both saying. So I think Nolan wanted to do what he wanted to do is he basically wanted the audience to follow the journey of the protagonist.
Yeah.
That's what he wanted. He wanted them to discover things while the protagonist was discovering things.
Yeah.
That's what he did in Memento. Basically, that's he's done that in other movies and it's worked. But I can see what you're saying as well. There's probably too many different moving parts that make it harder.
In that first hour of this movie, he meets 5 people and only one of them is relevant by the end of the movie. Only Robert Pattinson's relevant. The other 4, who fucking gives a shit about them? They never come back. Other than Auntie, she comes back at the end for fucking no reason.
She comes back in the end because she's supposed to tie up loose ends.
I still don't...
I'm pretty sure I think she gets told to tie up loose ends.
So
By-
by that they mean because Elizabeth Debicki knows about the concept of Tenet, she shouldn't be alive anymore, so she had to kill her. Is that right?
Fucking know. It's something like that.
Yeah.
But the whole thing is that the protagonist hired her anyway. So why is the protagonist hiring someone and telling her to tie up loose
The
ends?
protagonist doesn't hire her.
Well, he said...
Hi, the Indian chick.
Well, technically, the protagonist hires everyone in this movie.
No, who does he hire? He hires
everyone in this movie because he knows.
he hires himself and he hires
Robert
the kid.
Pattinson.
Yeah,
Robert
so
Pattinson.
he hires Robert Pattinson, but he goes through this movie seeing everyone
Yeah.
that eventually is going to join this program.
What
So,
program?
The Tenet.
Robert Pattinson. That's it.
Yeah, so Robert Pattinson's hiring all these people as well to bring.
Hiring who? Who are you talking about hiring?
Okay, dude,
How many employees does he have?
no one knows about Tenet except the protagonist. Essentially, the protagonist goes into the future and then sends Robert Pattinson back to make all these people come together to make Tenet. Essentially,
I don't think they know that they have been hired. I think they're just doing.
Wait, who's being hired? Who are you talking about being hired? Who the fuck's hired?
dude, there's like so.
Who
There's
are you talking about hiring?
there's the Aaron Taylor Johnson. There's the
Is that
That's the soldier. At
the
the
soldier guys.
Yeah, sure.
So he hires
unit.
all these people.
That unit,
He
yeah.
hires all these people.
Yeah.
Because Robert Pattinson might be the first person he hires in the future. He sends Robert Pattinson back to get all these people together. Basically,
Robin Pattinson can't be the first person he hires.
well, he would hire. He would
Rob
hire
Pattinson's
more
the
people.
kid. Rob Pattinson is the kid.
He would hire more people, but no one joins this program without him. He's the start of it. He's the protagonist.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But who's the scientist then that actually creates the algorithm?
Oh, that's someone in the future.
Someone in the future does that.
Yeah.
But
That you
he's
never-
the one
you
that
never get to.
He's the one that starts all this.
But not the Indian chick. He's got nothing to do with the Indian chick, and he's got nothing to do
So
with
what's
Kenneth.
the Indian chick? What's the Indian chick
She's
doing?
an arms dealer.
Why is she tying up loose ends?
She's been told, I think...
Who told her?
The future.
The future told her to
I'm
tie up
pretty
loose
sure.
ends.
Yeah.
The
I'm
future
fairly-
being the protagonist?
Or Kenneth. I think, or if she works for Kenneth Branagh, then...
If she works for Kenneth Branagh, then why does she direct the protagonist towards Kenneth Branagh? Why doesn't she just kill this bloke?
Good question. I need to
See,
rewatch it.
This is why this movie is convoluted. They could have made it so much simpler.
No, but that's like saying you can make so many things more simpler. I mean, people
No,
go through
but it's
trials.
unnecessary convoluted.
I mean, now we're getting to... I don't think it is. Like we just said, it was like 20 minutes of... Do you think that's... The fact that he's
20
meeting...
minutes is a long time in a movie.
Yeah,
it's
it
a
is,
long time.
sure.
Yeah.
But him going through those trials, I think, adds suspense to when he finally meets the bad guy, and it also makes the journey longer. It seems as if he needs to like actually find things and actually see how he needs to enter this guy. Even if it does end up a bit futile towards the end, it's not like they've taken a huge detour and like it's not like essentially that second Star Wars movie where they fuck it up and then send a whole jump.
Look, it takes a couple of detours though, because he does this mission there,
Yep.
which adds nothing to the mission that he does afterwards to steal the painting, which kind of takes another detour where the painting is... I know he's meant to fail that mission to kind of get everything moving,
Yeah.
but it feels like it's too many detours. He does this mission, which ends up doing nothing, and then he does the painting mission, which ends up doing nothing, which I understand that's meant to do nothing, which is fair enough.
everything is... I mean, if you're talking about fate, how things end up, everything is meant to end up the way it is supposed to end up.
Well, the whole first half is basically... He's meant to fail. The whole first half of the movie is meant to fail.
Okay, if you want to talk about this, like, we were talking about this Telugu movie Darling before. The first half of this movie is like the first half of Darling, because none of it actually matters once you get to the second half.
No, but he had to fail for the second half.
He had to fail, but that's like the last 20 minutes of this first half. Everything else doesn't really matter.
Well, I mean, doesn't he... Okay, so in the first half... Well, no, but in the first half... Okay, so you're saying everything... So going from Alfred to whatever this fucking Indian auntie's called.
Dimple Kapadia.
Dimple, all right.
Dimple.
So Kapadia, so from Alfred to Kapadia, there is nothing that he gains there? You saying that?
There is. There's nothing that he gains.
There's nothing that he gains.
Yeah.
Okay, but by having Alfred... I thought by having Alfred there, essentially he's getting in touch with British intelligence, who then allow him to meet Robert Pattinson. You can rewrite that in some way, okay? But let's say he goes... from Fleur de la Coeur saying that, I got to meet British intelligence, go straight to Robert Pattinson, then it doesn't seem like... Because my understanding is that Alfred is connected with that team that is assembled, is part of, like, British intelligence that was influenced by him in the past, right? But therefore...
You could rewrite it so that instead of meeting the chick, he meets Alfred instead, though.
Okay, so,
Instead of meeting Fleur, he meets Alfred.
but then he would have to be part of American intelligence.
It's flawed.
American, like, well, the guy tells him at the start to find out about it, and he goes back. Pretty sure he goes back to America, right, to like his own base, but then has to like get to this secret area of this intelligence department, and then tell her that he knows Tenet, gets in.
I don't think
right?
it's that important that you need to have a differentiation between American intelligence and then he needs to go meet British intelligence.
Why not?
I don't think it doesn't add anything to the story.
Well, so then it's just supposed to be like random intelligence departments?
Essentially, he's just meant to meet Robert. He needs to go meet Robert Pattinson. It doesn't matter about American intelligence.
You're saying that now, having known that it was fake
I don't
that he
care
met
if it's
Robert
fucking
Pattinson.
Afghanistan intelligence.
Afghanistan doesn't have intelligence. It's called the Pakistani ISI. But I think you're judging it retrospectively because you know that wasn't important. That is like a flag. Oh, that's important because he met Robert Pattinson. But if you were to just go along with this guy, he needs to go through certain trials. If you cut the fat for anything, sure, it is fine. But I don't see it being that like useless. I feel like I enjoyed, and I think Christopher Nolan was trying to get across the fact that this guy has to go through some trials, even if they are useless. But he's not dedicating like the whole story to useless trials.
I understand that, and that's what happens.
There might, sure. I mean, I don't think we're fundamentally. I think we're essentially
We're understanding the same thing.
Yeah.
But
you're
do
saying you
think that
can cut the fat.
Feel like
I think there is an
want to cut
effect
the
of
fat.
having the fat.
Yeah.
Fat
yeah.
is nice.
Yeah. We both think there's fat in this movie.
Yeah.
It's just whether
the fat adds anything.
In my opinion, they should cut the fat. In your opinion, they should keep the fat.
It's
basically.
HDL, not LDL. It's better for your health.
So the trials that he goes through, I understand it might have been more effective if... I just feel like the protagonist is very emotionless as well. Like...
Yeah.
If there
he does just fucking like just get through things.
Yeah, so if there was a little bit more emotion and you actually felt like he was going through trials, I think there was a bit of a...
But also, I mean, they start off with like they haven't introduced. They don't have a personal story for this guy.
Yeah, but they show him the concept of Tenet. Like Floor shows him this stuff, right? It's not like that stuff's pretty amazing. Like what he just saw.
Yeah,
and he's just there's no emotion. He's just like, oh yeah. This is happening. Like he's not amazed or anything.
I also I think there was. I don't think there's much emotion. I mean, even
maybe that's the thing. If
even the chick,
if you could connect more to it emotionally, if you could connect to him more emotionally, then you wouldn't mind him going through all this stuff.
I mean, but even the Aussie chick, I didn't buy the fact that.
Nah, I didn't buy that at all. Yeah.
A parallel to this is Inception when Ellen Page goes into a dream and she's amazed like at everything. Right?
Yeah.
So that's a parallel.
100%.
Yeah.
I think a lot of movies like Inception and Interstellar, they have much more like personal journeys and stuff.
You don't buy the shit with the like you said, Elizabeth Debicki and.
I only buy the fact that initially he was trying to use her to get to this guy.
Yeah,
I don't buy
buy the fact that like they have some connection or like
I didn't buy the fact that he's like, I have to save her now.
No, there's no point in this movie where he goes from I'm just going to use you to get to your husband to I need to save you now. There's nothing to bridge that gap. So you could take out that 20 minutes.
No, but I think what they could have done,
and then added some extra emotional investment to make that bridge work better. Would you agree that would have worked better?
Yeah, sure. But I think there was a concept. Now it's gonna be. I mean, fuck. I mean, this movie is confusing. But if you get rid of Dimple Kapadia, you got to get rid of the ending scene. You got to get rid of another scene in there. I'm like thinking about it. I can't explain it now, but I'm pretty sure Christopher Nolan, I mean, he doesn't put people in there for no reason. So I can't think of
I think you can
why
condense,
she was
you can
what she
condense
said.
a couple characters into one character in this movie.
Maybe.
And then cut the fat a little bit and then add a bit more emotional depth into it for 20 minutes or so to make that connection stronger between the two main characters.
No, I think that's, to be honest, they can have all the characters they want, but as long as they had some emotional depth, I would have gone with it.
Look, keep everything in it. Just add 20 minutes extra of emotional depth. You can do that as well.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You could.
If you like the fat,
I think this movie
does.
I think this movie does lack in emotional depth. Yeah, I think Christopher Nolan thought he could just run away with, like, you getting caught up with the protagonist just doing things. But then, like, there's points where you're like, fucking let this bitch die.
Okay, and along with
let her fucking die.
I think Christopher Nolan thinks reversing things and having things go forward in time. I know it was really complex what they did and how they filmed it.
Yeah,
I think it's not, watching it visually, it's not that amazing.
Yeah, so I've got some trivia on this, so we can take a bit of a break. So basically, they all the scenes, all the backwards forward scenes, they're not actually, they didn't film them forwards and then just reverse them. They actually made them do it backwards, essentially. So
okay.
it's not like they filmed
Which
it.
one? Like the running and all that?
Yeah, so it's not like they filmed
What do you mean
it.
you... What, those people...
They acted in backwards.
They actually acted backwards for authenticity. Like, this is what Nolan does, right? He's not
So
into...
there's people acting forwards and people acting backwards in the same scene.
I mean, yeah,
But
watching
looking
people,
at it-
watching people. Have you actually seen people run backwards? It looks fucking retarded.
Yeah.
So I think that's also why he chose to do it.
But
Yeah.
do you think that's that visually amazing to look at? Like, it's like, oh fuck, they made them go backwards. That's amazing.
No, I think just the fact that when you have people like involved in action that's going forwards, and then you can also see in the foreground or background that things are going backwards, that's cool. But
I didn't think it was that amazing though. I don't think it's like groundbreaking.
I don't think it's. Yeah, I don't think. It's
And I think
fucking
that's what
groundbreaking,
I
but-
thought that's what Nolan was banking on. He's like, look, this
'Cause he-
movie doesn't have the emotional depth, but people will be amazed by looking at these backwards and forward shit that will carry them through it.
Because as
the
we all-
cars going backwards. I think that was cool. I thought that was
But
fucking
look-
like that makes you doesn't it make you shit yourself?
You get-
I was like, fuck, where's this?
You get a
fucking
movie
going?
from 1970 and then reverse it, and you get the same feeling.
No, you don't. There's no Q7s. Audi Q7.
I mean, that was... Some of the action sequences were cool, but I don't think it was as cool as he probably wanted them to be. Because a lot of the scenes, as we already established, a lot of the first half, there are scenes basically there for action sequences. So there's that plane sequence, there's that reverse bungee jump sequence. They're there for action.
I
right?
wonder why the guy was like, "Oh, we should use a plane." I'm like, sure. I mean, you could just use a fucking massive bomb.
You could use whatever. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, like there's a lot of scenes that...
And
this
that's-
is this
that-
is in...
Which other action
Yeah.
scene? Other than the plane?
So there's a plane scene, there's
And
that...
then there's the final scene
There's a reverse bungee jump
Yeah.
scene, which is not a long... It's not
and the
long
car
sequence.
chase scene.
Wait, the
car chase
reverse
scene?
bungee jump scene.
That's the India one.
That's the
That's. I don't think that's actually reverse. I initially
No,
thought
as
it.
in, it's not like reverse
No,
time.
no,
but
it's not reverse time, but it's like a.
It's the concept of bungee jump, but like going upwards.
Oh yeah.
yeah.
It's just like
Yeah.
reverse abseiling or some shit.
I think he calls it like. I think he calls it bungee jump or something. Anyway.
Yeah, bungee jumping just the other way, in and out.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, he says in and out.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
I just don't think it was as cool as he wanted them to be. That was the only thing.
Yeah. Like none of these even come close to some of the action scenes he's done in other movies.
I think Christopher Nolan was actually banking on the concept of like fate. You know how like I think the coolest part is like the cool parts are like when you finally realize how things fit. Oh, she saw herself jumping off the ship. Oh,
I thought that was her anyway, though. I just had
did you?
Look, there's parts of this movie. Yeah, there's parts of this movie where they have a revelation. I'm like, oh no shit, I knew that was a revelation. Like at the end when Robert Pattinson, you see the back of his bag, and you realize he's the guy at the start. I'm like, fuck, I knew that as soon as that happened. I'm like, that's Robert Pattinson, 100%. I'm like, who the fuck else would it be? It's Robert Pattinson.
Oh, right. I mean, I wasn't like, I didn't necessarily try and look for a twist or look for hidden characters. I was just like going with it, and so I was like, oh, okay, the thing again. Okay, so it's important, but like you're already at.
But I
Endgame
already
by then.
knew it. I already knew it by that point. It's
Yeah,
like,
true.
why are you adding this scene to kind of over-explain that? You didn't explain anything else, but you're going to over-explain this.
Wait, what do you over-explain?
At that end part, he's like, when they zoom in on the
That
back
wasn't
of his,
obvious though.
it was so obvious.
No, the zooming.
They zoom in on the back of his backpack,
Yeah,
and
but-
then they flash back to the starting scene to show that it was him, and then they come back again. So it's like, oh, it was
Mate,
him from the start.
Nah, in the scope of all the action, I'm like, there's, when he gets up and gets shot and saves it from the
It's
bullet.
over-explained.
But people might have missed it. People might have missed it there.
So he's
is kind of
worried. He's
over-explained.
worried about people not understanding this, but
No,
he's
but I
not
think
worried
that's
about
the core
people not
concept.
understanding the other parts. So, like, why is he over-explaining that, but he under-explains everything else? It doesn't make sense to me that he specifically that part. He's like, oh, people won't understand this.
But I
unless
think that's the best. That's the best scene in the movie. I think that was the only, actually,
I
like
think-
the only
no.
proper scene where you're like, you kind of are like, oh shit, okay, that's a bit emotional.
No,
that's probably like
the only part of
part
that that was interesting is when he says, "You're the one that hires me in the future." I don't think the rest of that's necessary. It doesn't. You don't need to explain the part where he did the bullet at the start.
But Robert Pattinson doesn't explain it.
Yes, he does. He says specifically, "You,
Yeah,
my
no.
stories ends here.
Yeah,
yours
but
just
Robert
begins."
Pattinson doesn't say that I was the one who inverted the thing. I was the one that did that.
They flash back to show it.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a flashback. Yeah, sure. But
But
also,
why?
you're at the end of the movie and you're just reinforcing this point, which is Which is, I mean, this is the point when you find out that it's been him the whole time.
If you're following the movie up till then and you don't, if you
What
followed
are you-
it up till then,
No.
then you understand that anyway. You don't need that over explanation.
What? So you figured
No,
out?
I'm happy that-
you figured
I'm
out the
okay.
protagonist did the whole thing before this.
No, that's not the part I'm saying. That's not the part
But
I'm
that's
saying.
also when you find. But that's when you find out.
No, I'm happy. He could have just said, your story's beginning here, mine finishes here.
Yeah.
In the future, you're the one that hires me. And then,
What
he started
else
everything.
extra does he say?
It flashes back to the very start of the movie
Yeah.
where Robert Pattinson shoots the gun and he sees it for the first time.
Yeah, I mean that's just like reinforcing the point.
Why?
People would have forgotten. I couldn't even remember that I saw the fucking keychain at the start. You're kidding me, Darren. No. You're kidding me.
I disagree that he had to over-explain that part.
It's
but
not-
everything
that's
else
bullshit.
in
That
this
is not-
movie. Everything else in this movie is so under-explained. But that specific part, he went back and flashed back and specifically showed it to us.
Whether that's over-explained or unexplained, we'll leave that.
That's
But
pretty
I
much
think-
the anchor, though. I feel like
I think that
it's
was-
okay over-explaining the anchor of the movie.
Look, I don't hate that he did that. I'm just like, if
You
you're
just
going to
hate me.
explain, no, I'm just saying, if you're going to explain that so much, why haven't you explained other things in this movie more?
No, I think
Because that's the pivotal. I feel like that's the pivotal scene when he realizes that the Rob Pattinson the whole time was supposed to save him and go die. He needs to go die now, right? That's his
I
fate.
think we're talking about two different things, though.
What?
I think we're talking about two different.
The
I'm not
ending
talking about
scene. The ending scene where Robert Pattinson goes with the British guy,
Yeah.
and this guy pisses off.
Yeah.
The protagonist pisses off.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's when he realizes that the guy with the keychain saved him and introduced him to Tenet and also saved his life just then. That's the realization.
Yeah, you get that from watching the movie, though.
I didn't see that keychain the first time I watched it.
I 100% saw the keychain. They zoom in on it and hold it for like 5 seconds.
No, the camera is there. I remember because we watched it upstairs.
showed it to me,
Yeah. It was just like he just looks at it. That's it. Like it's not a huge emphasis at the start.
You look at a
And
keychain
even-
on a backpack for a bit of time. It's not just going to be there randomly.
No, but also you're like it's also like he's looking at this guy because this guy just inverted a bullet and ran off. So you're like, shit, who was that? Not nice
Okay,
keychain.
well, I fundamentally disagree with you on this, but let's move on. Yeah.
No, but like, so the reason I'm saying that it's okay because that's the scene. I think that's the scene where the main protagonist realizes that his role is now to mop up everything, and he's gonna start everything again, right?
No,
and he's
I
gonna
get that.
hire him.
I get that. But you don't need all
and
that.
And he hires this guy for him to die, and Rob Pattinson the whole time knew he was gonna die at this point. And so, like, I'm happy for these flashbacks to occur. I'm like, look, even if it is tiny bit of exposition, I'm like, that's okay in this scene. Yeah, I know.
I disagree. I disagree. But I've already said my piece. I can't say anything more to kind of... I've already said everything I could to say.
So I think that scene, I think it was actually there to be an emotional scene. That whole explanation.
I thought it was a bit emotional.
Yeah.
I thought it was okay. I mean, obviously, yeah. Look, you're not like rooting. You're not crazy rooting for these guys.
Yeah.
But to be honest, they're the only ones that actually have have a connection just because they're always doing it together rather than actually having a connection.
Yeah.
I thought the connection was actually the only other time where they properly connect was when Robert Pattinson saves or stops him from killing himself. You know, that's the only other time where like they're like just in the hangar.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like the only time when they interact in the middle of like a tense scene and like there's a proper interaction there. And then they kind of like don't really properly interact. Maybe a
Not
bit
really.
where they're going back.
There's a part where, they go back and they're like driving in the van away from the airport. There's a little interaction there, but
Yeah, that's like minimal.
yeah, like you don't really get the feeling that these guys are like best mates or anything. It's just like,
Yeah.
yeah.
And also, you always wonder. You're like, I'm surprised. I guess, if we run with the concept that Rob Pattinson is the kid right at the end, I guess he knows that his mum's going to be okay, but also, like, as if he's not showing any stress that his mum's like going through an inverted bullet right now and she's freaking out. I guess he knows she'll be okay, so maybe that's why. Yeah, it also raises like that question of like, well, what happens if Rob Pattinson just decides to do nothing right then? I mean, things should work out technically, right?
Well, he says
Battles-
what's happened. That's what he says, right?
Yeah, and that's the whole concept. I think that's what backs up the concept of him not being told anything. I think that's why they run with the concept of the protagonist, like going into this really not knowing anything. Like he's just looking for it, because if he gets told too much, he'll find out too much about himself in the future.
But I'm happy with that as well. I think we both agree on most of this.
Yeah.
But there's just fundamental things that I think don't need to be in this movie, and you're happy for them to be in this movie. Yeah.
It's like, it's good. It's the fat.
Yeah.
What other scenes do you reckon are like shit?
I think Aaron Taylor Johnson's character is probably unnecessary in this movie, and it could have just been Robert Pattinson's character. What does he add to this movie?
Wait, Aaron Taylor Johnson? Oh, okay.
He adds a bit of exposition.
Quicksilver?
At the end.
He adds a bit of exposition, which Robert Pattinson could have given.
But maybe his character couldn't have been in that position to do it, based on what we've
I mean, you need
discussed.
to be, you need to be like to be essentially like, what is this guy? He's like a colonel of like this task force or whatever.
Yeah, why couldn't Robert Pattinson be the colonel?
Because he's a spy. He's a
and Robert Pattinson, you're introduced to this colonel guy kind of as like this other team that comes and helps out with the pincer movement at this other point in time.
Why couldn't Robert Pattinson be the colonel?
Well, man, you're giving like this character that he meets at this Indian place essentially a lot of power. Like,
yeah, he's the main character of this movie.
No. But like, that's like saying, like, your reaction, if that actually happened, your reaction would be, oh, so Robert Pattinson just has a fucking army now, does he? Like, that would be the reaction.
Yeah, but he essentially does have an army because he calls in these guys to help him, and then
He works with them. He works with that
if
team.
he works with them, then why can't he just head off the team?
But that's very different to him being the head, like the bloody general of that thing. You know?
I think the Robert Pattinson's character is meant to be this mysterious character, so I don't think you're meant to have too much background knowledge about him.
And it will attract way too much attention as well. That, like, oh yeah, you just meet this random guy. Oh shit, he's got this whole inverted.
It just ends up being a random guy. Like, he just comes in and you're like, who the fuck
That's
is this
why
guy?
Alfred's there. It's
No,
Alfred's
not
team.
Robert Pattinson. Aaron Taylor Johnson.
Yeah,
He just comes out of
Alfred.
the blue, out of nowhere.
Yeah, Alfred sent him.
And you're like, who the fuck is this guy? Like, why is this guy in this movie? And he's in the movie for like maybe 2 important scenes, and that's basically it. I think it's not necessary, in my opinion. I think
No, I think there's stuff that can be removed from this movie.
But there's always like characters, right? Don't you see, like in other movies, there's always like a character that you can say is futile. Another character could have taken that role, but that's how the story is written, and it's not like they've like emphasized it that much, so much so that you're like, oh, what the fuck was this guy doing the whole time? You know what I mean? Like, I don't feel like these characters are emphasized so much so that it feels like there was no payoff. I was like, these guys are introduced. I mean, I can think of
they're
like
just side characters. They're
yeah,
not
I'm
like,
just thinking of like, you know, like if you were to think of Harry Potter, there are a lot of things that happen in Harry Potter that you can argue that the main characters could have done, but also it also adds to the fact that not everything is done by these main characters, you know? I'm just thinking of Harry Potter just because it's such a big storyline with such a big ending. But, you know, like also I think having other characters that just influence things also gives you a sense of you're not in control. Like there's a lot of external factors that are adding to the combination of what's happening. I mean, you know, once again, it's a moot point ultimately.
I think it's the fact that this is a Christopher Nolan movie, and just based on previous movies, and you know his high standards, maybe that's what we're expecting. Even side characters.
I don't think
to have
this
some
movie is
importance.
up to the same standard. I mean, ultimately, I don't think this movie is up to the same standard. Essentially, from what you're saying is that you're not emotionally invested in this character.
That's right. Yeah,
you just need to. It's like the flow that needs to get you. And
but that's the thing, because there's if you had the emotional investment in this character, then I don't care if there's lots of fat in this movie. But
I think this movie would have worked if there was emotional investment. I think
it would have worked as well.
It would have worked.
Exactly. Yeah. But why do you put time into these other characters when you don't put time into the main character? When you could have used that time that you have with these other characters to put time into this main character.
I think the time he had with the main character, he didn't use properly either.
Yeah,
he has a lot of time with the main character, but there's no.
Yeah, but he had this extra time as well that he could have used. But
he could have. Yeah.
If you say that all the points with the main character had to be the way it was, then that's fine. Yeah. You could have had extra parts to basically, make this movie better, in my opinion.
Yeah, I definitely agree. This movie could have been better. I still reckon it's a pretty good movie by itself. I don't think by not having. I think there's still enough elements in this movie and like the concept of this movie that I think it's still a good movie.
So I think the concept's cool, and I think there's a couple of cool things in it, but there's nothing in this movie that makes me want to revisit it. There's nothing in this movie that I'm like, oh, I was really invested in that. I want to revisit it.
I would watch it again. Would you watch it again?
No.
Really?
No.
I wanted to keep watching it when I was watching it the other day.
For me, it's different because I want to watch it again. I want to watch it again, but when I start watching it, it's just such a chore. It's just like,
really?
Yeah, it's like it's just hard to get into it. Like,
well, the third time or the second time it was a chore.
I've still watched it. The second time was a chore. Like because I was trying to really concentrate the second time as well.
Really?
I just there's no enjoyment in it. I just feel like it's a bit grim and there's just no enjoyment in it. And the action sequences, they're not that spectacular. There's not.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, there's nothing that you want to go back and like watch it again for. I feel unless you really want to study it and you want to understand all the different concepts, then you do it.
Well, yeah, I think that's why I would want to watch it again. Is just to get in my head again, get all the parts to click. Yeah, I mean,
I just feel like it's a really.
I think that is to be honest, I feel like that is the satisfaction in this movie. Is like. When just the constant realization of how things click into place is, I mean, that's really, I don't know if it was going for it, but that's, I feel like the most satisfying part about this movie is like how all the parts click into place. It's not necessarily, definitely not the character development of the protagonist. We don't even know this guy's name. And I don't think it's the character development.
But do you enjoy that? Like, did you enjoy this movie the first time you watched it?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
But I think not just that, but I think that would have been wrecked for you as well because the sound just didn't work. But I feel like the soundtrack definitely added to it because when I first went into the first scene, is like that, like, you know, that sound. It just kept, and so like, and it wasn't too loud so you couldn't hear things, but it got you nervous straight away. And like, you're already like, it just encapsulated me. And like, and even I was watching it with Bhargav and we were just like, shit, like there's a lot going on. And like, you just like kind of captivated for a while. And I think, the sound worked well enough in the way we saw it so that together with this kind of, you're hit with this concept that, I mean, it's not a crazy concept, but you need to adjust your mind to watching it. Whenever there's like inversion and stuff, you need to like watch it through a filter and try and understand what's going on. That combined with the soundtrack, I thought was a very good experience. And that's why I think the whole time thing and the experience of the movie, I think is what I would consider enjoyable. And also I think that's why Dunkirk, I think half the reason why Dunkirk is so good is because of the soundtrack. I think the soundtrack makes you like shit your pants. Like even right at the start, this like all you hear is a soundtrack. It's like these guys taking a piss, doing up their zip and just walking and then getting shot at and like keep walking. And it's like the constant that ticking or whatever Hans Zimmer does in that movie is what actually keeps you on edge rather than the scene itself, which I don't think is true of Interstellar. And I think Interstellar holds its own, like the actual cinematography and the actual scenes are what get you freaking, you know, kind of freak you out. Except for like some scenes in Interstellar where, you know, when she goes and burns her brother's farm down, the music then is like, because I rewatched it the other day, that music is actually what makes you nervous.
That's the organ.
Yeah, it's the organ.
Yeah.
That makes you like freak out because you're like, shit, it's culminating in something. There's like, this is directing me in some way.
Yeah, I mean, that scene's really good because the Earth scene's fire and like stuff's going down on Earth with her. And then he's like dying, isn't he? He's having that confrontation with Matt Damon. Yeah.
And all the concepts are the same. It's like she's saving someone from themselves. This guy is Matt Damon is saying he's going to save, humanity, I think that was a parallel, or like he was going to save humanity and it was nuts. Yeah. Look, I mean, this, as I said, this movie isn't even close. I mean, it's not, I think it's still really good, but it takes a lot for me to rate something from 8 to 9. It needs to be way better. So I don't think they're on the same things as Inception and Thingo, but yeah.
All right.
How long has it been?
I'll rattle
1.5.
I'll rattle through some
another 45 minutes, and we can match Mandalorian review.
I'll rattle through some trivia just so we can relax a bit. Can you add the soundtrack to this podcast?
Build up the tension.
Yeah, the Travis Scott song. I'm actually surprised. I mean, Ludwig is a bit more open than Hans Zimmer is, I think, to other artists, and that's why. Because you know that single that released? Released with, it was Hans Zimmer.
Yeah.
I mean, Ludwig and
Nolan was
Travis
saying
Scott.
that, so Ludwig basically suggested that they should include that that song basically from Travis Scott. And
Yeah.
Chris Nolan doesn't usually.
Well, who made? No, I thought. Well, who made it? Do you know who made the song? I thought Travis Scott. I thought Ludwig already made that, and then Travis Scott rapped over it and then released it as like a song.
I'm not sure which order it was.
I doubt that the main theme was made by Travis Scott,
No, not the main theme.
but like that.
Yeah.
Isn't that the main theme?
But they did say that Travis Scott's voice is dispersed throughout the movie.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. So I don't know who was actually. I'm pretty sure it was Ludwig, but yeah.
I'm a Travis Scott stan, so whatever.
So the word tenet presumably originated from the Sator square. This is what you were telling me about.
Yeah.
It's a word square containing 5 Latin words in a palindrome that dates back to the ruins of Pompeii. So the puzzle is a 5x5 square made up of 5 letter words written in 5 lines. So the words are Sator, Arepo, Tenet, Opera, and Rotas. All of these words are in the movie in some way. So Sator is obviously the antagonist's name. Arepo was the painter's name.
Yeah, that she had an affair with.
Opera is the first scene. They go. Is that the opera? They
Yeah, they're at the opera.
yeah.
Is it the opera or is it just a performance?
I think it's the opera.
Okay.
Tenet obviously is the name of the movie, and Rotas is the organization. I think.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, fuck, I didn't notice that.
Actually, I got it here. Rotas is the name of the security company that houses the painting. I think.
Ah,
Yeah.
gotcha. The hanger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In addition to performing stunts backwards, the main cast actually had to learn how to speak reverse for their roles. So that is scenes when they're speaking in reverse, they're actually doing it for real. Kenneth Branagh not only learned how to speak backwards, but also had to do it with a Russian accent. John David Washington is more athletic than your average actor, but after filming relentlessly over many months, there were times that he couldn't get out of his bed, apparently. He did that NFL show, didn't he?
Yeah,
Yeah.
He played
NFL
in
show?
he played in the NFL. He was drafted. Ballers was the show. He was drafted in the NFL. He didn't
one with
play
The
that
Rock?
much. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Is that
That
show
show
good?
they use real NFL players, which is why he was in it.
Throughout this film, the color red is used to indicate time going forward, and blue is to indicate time inversion. This is used in that last scene as well, because the soldiers have
Yeah, the teams.
the teams. Yeah,
red and
yeah.
blue team.
This is a reference to the Doppler effect, by which bodies of light traveling away from Earth appear in red, and light waves are stretched outwards. Bodies of light traveling towards Earth appear blue, as the light waves are compressed together. During the climatic battle scene, the red team and the blue team both have 10 minutes to complete the final mission, 10 forward and 10 backwards, which makes Tenet. So maybe that's also a reference. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Oh, I never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
The ending of this podcast would just be a long sigh.
I think this is a very divisive film, obviously. There will
Yeah,
be people that
100%.
really like it. And I'm a massive fan of Christopher Nolan. Like, don't get me wrong. But this was... I hope for his next movie, he does something a little bit more low-key. Like, he doesn't have to go so ambitious. I think something like Prestige, which is basically a drama with a high-level concept behind it. I think he's leaning too much towards these, like, big action, blockbuster sort of movies. I think he should go back to his roots and do something a little bit quieter. Yeah.
Doesn't need to go crazy with it. I don't think.
What is he? Is he like trying to get into physics or something? Like, what, he goes with a lot of these physics.
I think he's just
concepts now.
interested in it.
He has a fascination with time, but I think he's done quite a few movies where he's touched on this now. Like there's Inception, where there's a time element. There's Interstellar, where there's a time element. There's
Memento.
this, and then Memento. And obviously,
well, there's no
Dunkirk,
time manipulation in Memento, but
Dunkirk, he does the whole
yeah.
thing with different time.
Time dilation.
Yeah.
Like one of the storylines goes over.
There's like 3 different
10 days or
storylines, and there's
something.
different duration for each of the storylines.
Yeah, one of them's 1 day, one of them's 1 hour,
Yeah.
one of them's
the one that's over days must the guys
land.
on the ship.
No, the land.
the 1 day is the guys on the ship. I think it's 10 days the guys on land.
Yeah.
And then Tom Hardy's 1 hour. The
1
guy
hour.
in the air.
So land is the
Yes,
longest one.
yes.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
Is the land longest one?
Land's longest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ah, so they're just like stranded there. Yeah, makes sense. Ah, and Kenneth is in that one, isn't it?
Yeah, that was the first
He
time
is,
he
yeah.
General.
Yeah. This is a completely different role. We didn't really talk about the actors, but I thought Robin Pattinson was probably the most likable character in this, I guess.
Yeah.
He has a bit more of a character. Like everyone else is a little bit too.
No, I like Capadia.
And I think Kenneth Branagh was very menacing, and he was pretty
was
good.
good.
Yeah. Look, everyone acts well in this movie.
Yeah. He always gets good actors.
Everyone,
so, yeah.
everyone does well in what they're given.
Yeah.
There's a key issue in this movie, which is you know when she goes back onto the boat They all travel back, and so does Kenneth. Kenneth's traveled back onto the boat. He's clearly older than when they initially met, and yet they still accept.
She doesn't realize.
Well, no, So actually, because he thinks she is the present, she's not from the future, right? So if he looks older, then he should expect her to realize that he's older. And they even show like what he looks like younger on the boat. And I'm like, you should know this guy's an older version of himself. Like, or you should be like, did you just fucking age in like 5 minutes? What happened? But yeah, I mean, that's something very minor. It's like, what?
There's bigger stuff than that.
Yeah, there's bigger stuff than that in this. Yeah.
All right. Anything else we want to say?
No, I think I said everything.
Yeah.
I think I think the reason I just like this movie because it was enjoyable. It was an enjoyable experience, but ultimately you need the right sound for it.
I think you need to watch it yourself to decide if you like it or not. It's going to be different depending on what kind of stuff you like.
No, I still recommend you watch it, make your own opinion of it.
I recommend people should. I think people should watch it. I would recommend this movie.
No, you should definitely watch it.
But I'm not watching it with you.
Where does this rank? Give us your rankings. We've done our rankings in another episode. But
wait. So what is your tier list? So what did you say?
I can't remember, but this would be around.
What's
like
your
you said,
best one?
It'll be. Oh, Inception's the best one.
Inception's best. Okay.
Yeah.
Then
I can't remember specifically.
I would go like
maybe like Dark Knight after that, and then Batman Begins. Yeah.
I think we excluded those. From
Oh,
our list,
okay.
but
Inception, Interstellar.
I think I had Inception, Memento,
I'll probably have Memento after
Prestige.
Interstellar.
I had
yeah.
Inception, Memento, Prestige, then Interstellar.
really.
Yeah.
If I had a god tier, I'd go Inception, Interstellar, Memento,
That would all be God tier for me.
and then I'll put Prestige.
Yeah.
The reason I don't rate Prestige as much is because I saw through it. I saw the twist immediately.
So the first time you watch it, did you
The
get
first time I watched it,
Okay,
I saw it immediately, and I was like,
Yeah, because
Wait,
it's
this is
right
weird.
in your face. yeah.
but
Like, you
people
can
didn't see that.
Yeah, but
Which
I didn't
was-
see. I didn't see it, but it's right in your face. If
Yeah.
you spot it, then it's impossible to not see it.
But
Yeah.
all of those movies are like next level.
The Prestige
compared to
is
this
really
movie.
good.
Yeah.
As well. Obviously, The Dark Knight. I mean, Batman Begins.
Begins,
I actually rate Begins. I used Begins in my Year 12 English essay. In my as part of our concept, our teacher encouraged us to look into the whole concept of like fear and identity and how like you utilize it and how it defines you, which is what Begins is. Yeah. Batman Begins is essentially that, which is great. So like I really rate Begins because I went into that whole concept. But obviously Dark Knight, the whole concept of anarchy. I can't even remember a movie, or at least that I know of, that really deals with trying to, how do you defeat anarchy or someone who wants to go after anarchy is fucked. Yeah. And then what other movies are there?
Insomnia.
So then I would put
Rises.
Tenet. So then I'll put Dark Knight Rises, Tenet,
Insomnia.
Insomnia
following.
lower than that. Insomnia was like I watched
Dunkirk.
it. Cool.
Did you say Dunkirk God tier already?
God, I reckon. Yeah. I reckon Dunkirk was as good as 1917. Other people disagree.
1917 better.
A lot of people say Dunkirk's better. All my friends say Dunkirk's better.
I think
I got better friends than you.
better.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know. Then I rewatched. So I really liked 1917. I rewatched Dunkirk. And I was like, oh shit, this is bloody hard. It's a bloody hard decision for me. But I think they're equally as good as each other.
My bottom three would be Tenet, Insomnia, and Following.
Oh yeah, so I haven't seen them.
All of them will be. All of the other ones are higher than.
Like shit? Oh no. Or
No,
just
no,
like,
they'll still be good. Like
They're still
yeah.
decent. They're not.
Yeah.
has he made a shit movie?
Yeah.
Nah.
They're not shit movies. They're just-
Following's good. Like it's a 1 hour movie. It's very low budget, but it's still good. It's still better than a lot of movies. All right, I guess we'll leave it at that. I think we're all. This movie makes you tired. I think just thinking
good.
about it.
No wonder that guy couldn't get out of his bed. He's bloody acting in it.
One thing I didn't mention is so the actors had to go into a locked room to read the script for this movie, and they could only read the parts that they're in, so they didn't actually know the full story either.
Yeah. That's what they didn't they do that for the Avengers and stuff?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. I don't know. They did table reads for Game of Thrones. I don't think they separated that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Didn't make a
they
difference
should
to
have.
them.
They should have.
Yeah. They should have.
Also, yeah, and like because I feel like a lot of if you've watched the table read for like the final episode or whatever,
Varys is so unhappy.
yeah, and Emilia Clarke and Kit Harington are like they can't show disappointment to the writers, directors, and everyone And when like they're giving all the credit to fucking Arya Stark for doing like killing off. Am I giving away shit? No, I don't give a shit. This is spoiler section anyway.
It's been more than a year.
Giving credit to Arya Stark for killing off the Night King. Like they couldn't show their disappointment, even though she definitely should not have done that shit. That was the worst thing I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, if people have questions for us on Game of Thrones or Tenet, how do they get in contact
So
with
they
us?
can contact us at cognitiverecalibrationpodcast@gmail.com or on all other platforms at Cognitive Recalibration.
Yep, and if you want to support the podcast, please give us a good review on iTunes or Spotify. And there are two other mechanisms where you can support us. One is via our Amazon affiliate link. So I'll link all of Christopher Nolan's filmography in the description for this episode. And also you can give a one-off donation to us via Buy Me a Coffee, which we'll use to further develop the podcast. All right.
Nice. If anyone has a steelbook of the last season of Game of Thrones, can you please give it to me so I can burn it?
Okay. Thanks, Kireeti, for joining us again.
No worries,
thank
man.
you.
I had no choice. You came to my house.
Yeah. We basically
forced you into it.
We invaded your house, locked you in a room, and made you record a podcast
My
with us.
dog has been crying ever since.
So thanks, everyone, for listening to this episode, and hope you're all staying safe. We'll see you next time.
See ya.